Hello, welcome to Alive on One, a miniatures-based podcast with a focus today on Marvel Crisis Protocol. I am Jian, hosting today, and with me I have Mike Waller. Say hi, Mike.
Hi guys, good to be back. I'm ready to be
Yeah.
told why Recal is a terrible card today.
Oh, yeah. We're alluding to our third podcast host today. That would be Simon from
Hey.
Montreal. Hello.
See, the funny thing about Recal is that people bring it up more than I do, so I don't even have to see my piece anymore. I can just let people get triggered by themselves.
It's such a take. I've never heard someone say that before. It's such a Simon take. That's what I love about it.
Like, you say it's a
really
Simon
good.
take, but like, everyone in my local agrees. Like, ask Nick Menard, ask like every single one of us have that opinion. I'm just the more vocal one, I guess, or the one that's
So let me
most out
ask you
there.
this: when you're at tournaments over there, is just Recal never in a list, basically?
Barely. Like, unless you're playing like models that synergizes with it, like Dormammu, or like models that count skulls, like Blue Marvel, not really. So like, unless you have explicit synergy or a faction that's short on cards, not really.
That's
Like, there's
Like,
joint
to me-
effort sees more play than Recal here by like a good margin.
What? You know what? Okay, that card's actually pretty good though. I do like that card.
That's definitely an underplayed card, yeah. So for me, Simon, like at this point, Recal to me is just it's a tech piece card. So like if you're playing against APOC, right, and you're just trying to, you know, because their war representative is just going to get all successes on their dice pool. So it's just more like I just want to counter that. But yeah,
and
if it's not,
to me, that's like a very
that,
reasonable use for Recal.
but like you wouldn't take it as like, it's like, well, this is a generic matchup and I just need a fifth card. And you're like, if you take Recal, I will judge you, says Simon. Is that correct?
I won't judge, but I think you can do better.
Dang. All right. Well, it's a good take, Simon, because you know what? It's just rent free forever in people's heads now.
Oh, yeah.
So, all right. So I would like you to move on to our Alive on One section now, and we're going to have you regale us on an Alive One story, Simon. What do you got for us today?
Oh, yeah. So we're still all in limbo in the waiting room for the updates. So we're all trying some weird shit. I was recently on a Zemo 2 Hydra run, where I was playing Zemo 2 Red Skull 3, Baron Strucker, splashing Apocalypse. So the idea is to like use the first one on Zemo 2 to then trigger 2 more Shall Rise and get Red Skull 3 and Strucker's leadership together fairly early on. So my Alive on One story is that like I was playing a random pick-up game, and on round 2 I have my Apocalypse go, he double taps, stays as a model, then my opponent's goes and double taps my Zemo 2, leaves them on 1, which then lets me go with Zemo, daze the model that attacked me, then sacrifice him to remove the activation from APOC, getting both Red Skull 3 and Strucker's leadership. And turns out both of those leaderships on APOC is really good. Like APOC that heals for more during his turn and has a baked-in reality gem hit surprisingly hard.
Oh God, he's so hard to kill. He gets so much health back every activation.
And like one of the cool things you can do is that like APOC, people who have played APOC know he's like super flush with power. So like you can use celestial technology to like teleport Red Skull 3 and Baron Strucker, and then Red Skull 3 can just siphon power off Apocalypse to scalpel him using like a makeshift famine. So like it's a pretty fun squad if you're looking to play something at the LGS. And the fun thing is like it's 17 threat, which is by far the most common threat, so it's like pretty easy to plug in.
Yeah, I guess you just have to be willing to like, you know, KO your 4 threat. But I guess considering that Zemo 2 is in a weird spot right now because he is relatively fragile, I guess the best they can do is give you 2 leaderships and another APOC activation. Seems pretty good, actually.
And you still get to bring a 6th tactics card regardless. So like it's definitely not wasted.
Yeah. All right. I take your point there. That is actually a really fun list. I'm gonna try to recommend that to some of my locals because some of them really like to play tall monster lists, and we've been like him and hawing like if there's a way we can get like the Strucker APOC thing to work, because on paper I think it is like good, at least like playable, right, in a fun sense at your local casual nights.
I think it's definitely like a good list to play at the store, or like more thematic list. Would it win a tournament? Very unlikely, but it's really fun to play.
All right.
This makes me want to buy Baron Strucker and get them.
I'm saying, yeah,
and like
they got
more Shall Rise is like really funny, so you get some good mileage out of it.
Yeah, man, just the Hydra cards are so jank. Like, oh my god. Okay, moving on to our Hobbit section. Mike, you have been working through a bunch of figures, it looks like.
Oh yeah, I've been on my Legion kick. So, quick story. Last week, I was walking in Red Bank, New Jersey with my girlfriend, and there was just a game store I'd never been to, and I went in there to go to the bathroom, and I found the Mandalorian box for Legion that's been sold out everywhere, and they said they're not restocking it for a couple of months. So I bought that, and then I got the leader box off eBay. I paid like $15 more than what it actually goes for. That comes with like Bo-Katan, Axe Bros, and like Paz Vizsla. So I have a bunch of Mandos. I built them up. I'm actually building the leader box right now as we're doing this. Built them all up. Did the basing for all of them. I'm going to go and try to paint them. And then I also finished for my Rebels the Fleet Troopers, that box. Those models are very old. They're 2019 and they're terrible. Like the sculpt is terrible. It's really bad. But I painted them up. I painted all 11 in like 2 hours. I just did a bunch of speed paints because I don't really care about them. And I finished Cassian for him because I don't use Cassian as the leader card. I use him as the heavy upgrade card to go with the Fleet Troopers because it actually makes them very good. And that's really what I've been working on this week.
Nice. We love our giant appleton wounds for our named characters.
Yep.
Yeah, he's not even good as like his leader card. It's like 100 something points, or you can just spend 25 points, put him into a trooper unit, and he's just like a god. Like the abilities that he gives that trooper unit, it's so stupid.
Yep. But hey, that's our Mass Army games, man.
Yep.
But good job though. Like that's a lot of progress for the Legion Army because it is not a small army to make for those.
Yeah, my goal at the end of the year is to have all my Legion armies done. So I finished all my droids. I have about 3,000 points of droids done, even though like the game is 1,000 points. So my whole droid army is done. My rebel army is getting there. I have about halfway done. These Mandos, I'm not going to spend too much time painting them. And then my clones are halfway done too. So I'm on a good track of my Legion goal by the end of the year.
Nice.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll get a game with Will at some point during this.
No, I've come to a conclusion that's never happening. Will, I'm calling you out. I know you don't like me. You don't want to play with me. I get it. I understand. You don't want me to kill your rebels. I've been asking Will for a game for like 6 months.
Listeners, please email or message Will Costello and ask him why he won't play a full game of Legion with Mike Waller. Thank you. All right. Moving on to the upcoming events we have. So currently it's July 21st for us as the day of recording. So the events we have upcoming up, but we have the Star Tournament at 5-Star Games on July the 25th, the Saturday, in Sturbridge, Massachusetts. We checked it out. I think they have like 2 slots left. It's a pretty nice tournament, mix of like different people, different skill levels from New England. But it's an up and coming like store, and I would really like to see them have success with their tournaments. Because it's always good to have more tournaments and more events for people to go to. Let's see, up in Syracuse, New York, at the Comic Zone on August 1st, there will be a normal tournament as well. Please check that out. Maybe you'll see Ben there. Summer Slaughter, Will Costello, aforementioned, will be running this event on August the 15th in Piscataway, New Jersey. Should be a good time. It is a Wicked Dicey event, so you can find tickets at wickeddicey.com.
Wait, can I say one thing about that event?
Oh, what's up?
So that event is 5 minutes from my house. but just like last year, I'm going to be on vacation during the event. So, once again, I scheduled my vacation and I'm not going to be able to go, but I can't complain because Japan's going to be fun. But
yeah.
Oh, what were you going to say?
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, if anybody goes to that event, if you like coffee, I have the coffee shop for you. It's called Chapter 2 Roasters. It is maybe 10 minutes from the event. They opened up a year ago. They're a great local spot. They roast their own beans there. The coffee is amazing. I go there all the time to hang out. So if you want coffee and you are going to the event, I recommend Chapter 2 Coffee.
Shout outs. Yeah, Chapter 2. Let's go. All right. And then moving up to Canada. So Torchlight Games will be having a GT on August the 22nd to the 23rd. This is in Burlington, Ontario in Canada. I believe a bunch of folks that are going there. I think, Simon, you're also going to that event, right?
Some of our locals are going. The Ontario crew is always a pleasure to play with. So it's going to be a blast. Encouraging anyone that can attend to go if they can.
Nice. Yep. And then just a slew of GTs. So the next event we have on our list is another GT. Millennium Games in Rochester, New York, is doing a GT on August the 29th. It is actually now going to be a one-day GT, so Ben will be able to play there. So, if you wish to see his lovely bearded visage, feel free to check that out. I think Bork will also be there as well for that one. So, come around, say hi, and have a good time at this GT in Rochester, New York at Millennium Games. Finally, the last one we want to always plug, because we want this to be a success, is the Saint Laurent Open in Montreal, Canada. And this will be on October the 24th at the Abyss.
Yep.
I think if you look at Google, Simon, it's just Abyss, right? That's mainly what you look at.
That's correct. Their website is Abyss Game Store, so you can find it up pretty easily. And hoping to see you guys there.
Yeah. Simon, are you running that or like?
I know one of my local, Thomas, is running it alongside other TOs from other game systems. But most of us will definitely be there.
If I may ask, how many players are going to be able to play?
I think. Well, let me just double check. I think it is capped at 36.
How many people are signed up right now? Do you know?
Not too many for now, but I expect a lot of us to sign up with time. Like, we're still pretty far ahead, right? It's for 3 months up.
Yeah. 3 months ahead is pretty long time to commit. So I imagine the last month you'll start seeing like an uptick.
Yeah, we'll start seeing a lot more people showing up. It's capped at 32.
All right, I'm gonna really consider about going there. It would be good this before WTC.
Yeah, yep. I would like to make the trip out. So maybe Mike will end up carpooling or something. We can discuss that as that gets closer to the event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the place is super nice. Like, there's also a bar and restaurant, so you get table service while you play, which has been my experience, been a really great experience.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys gotten the chance to look at the listeners. If you haven't been to the Abyss website, like, it looks really nice. Actually, you guys got a good photographer to showcase your bar and food and cocktails. It's a really great store. Cannot recommend enough. Sweet. Yep. Looking forward to that. So yeah, if you guys are able to make it, cross the border, have a good time. Or if you're already in Canada, please come through. All right. So let's see. We're gonna check out our timestamp here. 13 minutes. It's not bad, actually.
Very reasonable.
Yeah, I would say. Okay. Now, on to the main topic of today's episode, as you can see from the title card. Today's topic, we're going to talk about purposeful practice and how it can, sort of guide us in any upcoming events that we're kind of going for. So we've probably mentioned this on our Get Ready to Get Better series. If you haven't checked those out, please check those out. Me, Ben, and Steven have been trying to put those out to help people sort of like have a good stepping stone for their next Marvel Crisis Protocol progression, but really helps out in a lot of other miniatures games as well. Yeah. As far as like movement goes, like picking rosters, like, deployment, these principles can, apply to like a lot of different games as well. But we've mentioned the concept of purposeful practice, and I think nowadays, like, especially as a Ready to update, I don't know about you guys, but I think like finding something to practice, like as we wait for the updates to come, something that we, can try to get some improvement on before the actual character update drops is pretty important to me, I think, to keep like, my momentum going in this game. Yeah. So Simon, what any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think one of the main like advantages or like ways to think about purposeful practice, I think, is like once you have your fundamentals down, I think it's probably one of the most underrated practice to just help you get better at the game. Because once like you know your list, you're practiced into it, like you know the matchups, targeting certain specific niches or like being able to identify where your list might have holes or like trying to find these little spots to tweak and just get better or like trying to get better at certain scenarios, playing certain characters. Like it's, at least for me, one of the main tools to help you move from being like an okay player with good fundamentals to like an intermediate or high level player. Like it's a good, once you've built your foundation, it's a good way to like leveling up your gameplay.
Yeah, I agree. Mike, do you have any thoughts of what purposeful practice means to you personally, or did we have pretty much covered that as well here?
Just to add on to it, I think if you're going to, especially team events, and how team events are structured, you don't necessarily always get the pairings that you want. So practicing into different archetypes of lists that you think are going to be out there is definitely good preparing for the event. That way you're not caught off guard by a lot of things. Uh, and like, example, like for squad goals, I know me, you, and Waylon were always testing each other with our list for the list that we thought were going to be at squad goals. And it's good to have that. That way you can see the weakness of your teammates' lists, or like see a weakness of your list as you get different reps against different teams.
Yeah.
Yep.
And like matchup practice, right, is definitely something you definitely want to take a look at. And I guess it's like, how granular do you want to make it? Like, do you just need to know, well, how do I play against Blue Marvel, period, right? Because that's a model that you expect to see quite a bit. Or it's like, what about the defenders matchup as a whole, right? Do I have something to sort of like deal with the hex, or do I just have to just sort of shuffle through it? And what are the weaknesses of this particular, like, prominent affiliation that we can sort of hone in on, right? And so, like, us testing stuff, like, obviously you came up quite a bit with the Novatech, that helped us feel a lot better pairing you into the defenders. So like, that was a for instance, but that came through like very purposeful practice, right? We were looking for either characters or just like, combinations of different gameplay elements to sort of help us deal with like, what was a very scary kind of list that we were expecting to face.
Yeah, you know what? Now that you say that, it's good to, people know what the best things are. Like for factions, like most times, like Guardians, I knew I wanted Adam. I knew I wanted Bill, like Bill's Bill. I knew I wanted Nebula in the list because she's really good. But also because of the meta and how different things shapes, it's good to just try different models in affiliation to see maybe you don't have to look outside as much in splashes. And like that's where the Nova thing came about, where we were just playing one night, and I was like, I'm gonna try all the models I haven't tried yet and see how they work. And I tried Nova, and I loved them. And then we tried them with the defenders, and did it a couple of times. Just we can't go off base of one game if it works or not. We played it a couple of times with Waylon, and realized that it was good, and we wouldn't have came to that conclusion, I don't think, ever, if I didn't, we didn't put it onto the table. So
Yeah.
getting different reps with models, or also trying different crisis selection that could work with your team.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the situation. Oh, Trim's coming through. 1 second. Simon, can you talk
Yeah.
about
So-
practicing like a character? I guess, like, if you want to
Yeah.
work on a character.
So basically, there's a few reasons why you would want to like make some targeted practice with a character, right? Maybe the character is newly released in the affiliation you're playing. So personally, I'm a big X-Men player, so whenever there's a new X-Men, I'll just force them on the table. Like bad matchups, good matchups, just force myself to play that model like for a few games. I usually go like 5 or 6 games just to get a feel of how it plays, because sometimes you have characters that read really good but perform actually pretty poorly, or vice versa, that read really poorly but once you put them on the table, they'll surprise you positively. So I feel like that's a very good reason to like force yourself to play a character, and I think forcing yourself to play them in both good and bad matchup will help you like identify when and where you actually want to play that model, instead of just like having it around in your list, not really knowing when to play them. I think characters update are also a really good opportunity to revisit and test a character. So whenever models get updated, it's a good idea to just see what they can do with the updates, whether it's buffs or nerfs. I think just again being able to identify how to use them and when to use them properly is really big. And I think the last place where I usually want to try and do some purposeful practice with characters is for team events. So let's say one of the models you usually have in your singles list is getting taken by another of your teammates. So you're trying to like find a character that's going to replace or approximate whatever functions that model had in your list. So that presents you with good opportunities to try and find other characters that either do something different or approximate the result, and just to see how they fit in your team, or even bring you to rethink how you approach certain tactics or a scenario where you might want to change your scenario setup if you don't have access to X, Y, or Z model. So it gives you like good opportunities to like learn models, how they interact with your list, and how they play in a wider tournament field.
Yeah. It's I was just thinking about like, in a sort of more longer view, the events you go into sort of can help shape like what you're kind of practicing for, right?
Yeah.
So in the sense that, yeah, like you mentioned, that team events will maybe limit the amount of characters you have. There's even like Highlander, like, tactics cards, and also crisis cards as well. So like,
Yeah.
that alone can help make you like practice like different ones. And and like the obvious example also is that Mike got to Nova, right? Because he had to practice with a more limited field, because he doesn't have the entire 200 something characters that he can put in his 10. So ingenuity can also come out of that sometimes too.
Oh yeah.
Especially with like the crisis changes, like, reevaluating the characters, right, on these crisis changes. I am continuously blown away by Moondragon, with or without the Mind Stone. This model is such a great disruptor of so many plans. And and you have to be either like think about incorporating her into your team, or like you have to learn how to play against her.
Yeah.
On top of like the strange stuff, anytime a new model comes out, right, it's like, okay, do we expect this to sort of like see a lot of play, and are they going to be on your team, or are they going to be possibly on the opponent's team, and what can you do like against it? I should mention that, like, when we conceptually mention purposeful practice, I like to think of it in the sense that, like, yes, you don't have to play a full game necessarily.
Oh
You
yeah.
just need to test scenarios, right? And I think, like, we're trying to be very time conscious, right, of our listeners' time. Some people have, a lot of free time to play Marvel. Some people may not have a lot of free time because of jobs, kids, family, clubs, extracurricular activities. Maybe you don't breathe Marvel Crisis Protocol 80% of your waking hours, and that's why purposeful practice, I think, is like really important, because you can take a character and just try to set up the situations, right? Uh, and this is helpful if you have either a friend that can help you do this, but with TTS and a low model count, like, I don't think it's actually that hard if you just want to like run through
Yeah.
scenarios yourself too, like if you want to do that.
I think
So
another thing you could do is like purposeful practice against certain models specifically. Like
mhm.
when we were facing subsequent kaiju metas, I feel like trying to work out your openings against a CGR who had rolled 5 on their initial power gain was definitely something you wanted to prepare for. So like just doing a full round 1 against like Guardians with a 5 powered CGR, just to see like how you would have to adjust your game plan to that specific scenario, is a very good example of like purposeful practice against a model as well.
Oh yeah, that's a good shout out, Simon. Obviously, CGR doesn't work like that currently, but
Oh yeah, but
we don't know if like Onslaught comes out. Are we going to revisit a CGR problem?
well, like
For
any
instance.
model that has like a decent amount of round one pressure, right? You talked about Boondragon, but with the Mind Gem, being cognizant of like her initial ranges might be something you want to work on for certain scenarios.
Yeah, it's gotten to the point where like because Moondragon is so good at like counterpunching me in the face, like especially with the Mind Stone, I kind of sometimes will just let her pick up something and
Okay.
and just sort of like try to interact with her afterwards, like from that. Easier said than done, but like sometimes I feel like that is the answer. But that requires you to actually use your list and see like it's like, okay, do we feel good? Like if I have like a Hawkeye, like, okay, yes, I can potentially do this. But if I only have like, like Daredevil, like melee listed defenders, like, that's probably harder, like asked to do that instead.
I wanna say when you do practice, if you have a sparring opponent that you do it frequently with, it's good to get in the mindset that this is practice, and it doesn't matter who wins the game when you're
Yeah.
playing with a person. It's the person that the game has a hard matchup for. How can we make this work? And like talk through different stages. You might come to that conclusion round 2. You might come to that conclusion the first 4 activations. And like how to make it better, and then just try again. And I know me and Waylon did it a lot. Like we would play like 2 rounds and be like, all right, let's re-rack. Like, okay, this isn't working. Let's try this. Oh, this does work. Let's try it again to make sure it does work. For different matchups. And having that mindset. And the reason why I mentioned this is because I didn't always have that mindset. And then it took a while for me to get there. That this is practice and you guys are on the same team and you want to come to the conclusion and have a good matchup, basically.
Right, because you're practicing not to like, and that happens sometimes too. Like people get into a practice game, quote unquote, but they treat it like a real match. And I'm just like, no, I'm not trying to, prove that I'm like, like more skilled at you or something like that right now. It's more like it's important for us to understand what's going on with this interaction and what can we both kind of learn from this, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard because like we talk about this a lot on this cast. I'm just like kind of check your ego sometimes. Yeah. Not that everyone's like inherently like is like I got to win all the time, but I see it a lot. Especially I do practice games with people because sometimes if you take enough like bad interactions in a row, you're just like I just want to have one good like swing on something. It's like, well, there's no reason to. I mean, this doesn't mean anything. Like at the end of the day, we're just trying to gather information here, So having that constant communication, because I know, Mike, you've probably experienced this with a lot of our training partners, and myself included. Sometimes, like sometimes I get in the mood, and I'm just like, oh nope, I gotta take a step back and be like, hey man, are you
good?
You good? you know.
Yeah, and
yeah, go ahead,
I think Mike brought a really good point about like putting yourself in that mindset and talking about it with your sparring partner. So I think like setting expectations from the get-go, like, oh, I'm trying to work like the opening against X, Y, or Z faction. Like, oh, I'm trying to not get got by Kingpin's early scenario pressure. So like, can we just play like full round 1 and half of a round 2 to see how like I unpack against it? And like try it, run it 1, 2, 3, 4 times maybe. And because you're not playing the full games, like it's easy to just adjust things, right? And like maybe rewind an activation. So, oh, that didn't work. So let me try this other thing, right? And just being very forward and communicative with your sparring partner and be open to like trying to brainstorm the thing together. Because more often than not, like you're all trying to get better. And I think being able to do that back and forth with your partner will make a big difference.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I also want to state another thing I thought of. When you are having these sparring matches, try the best like not to get tilted by dice because Marvel dice are very spiky and swingy, and you're trying to get down the fundamentals of the matchup. Like an example I'll bring up. I remember one time me and Waylon were playing like round 1. He did like a Shang-Chi flying kick and rolled 5 crits, and there was like 10 damage into one of my models. And he was like, "Let's re-rack up there." I'm like, "No, like we'll play it out because that can happen in a tournament. Let's see to the best of my ability, how can I crawl myself out of this? Like for the next like 2 rounds, and to just like not let Marvel dice tilt you, in a way, which if you let them, if it tilts you less in practice, when it does happen in a tournament, that mindset will be a lot better when it comes to the spikes.
Yeah. So that's a big instance, right? Like, sure, your model gets spiked like round 1, but now because they're full of power, right? Round 2, their injured side, what's their game plan look like afterwards? And that's still worth, like, I think, checking out, for instance. Yeah. So that's a good call, Mike. So that also ties in the fact that, when you're doing this, like, there is a tendency, it's like, when we get really dive into practice, sometimes the re-racking call can come very quickly, as in your example, Mike, right? And there is something I think to be said about playing things out a little bit, especially if a character has a lot of things they can do during a turn. So for me, for instance, like let's say there was a war machine that is on their injured side with a lot of power, and I'm testing them out. It's like, okay, I can kind of suss out what war machine can do for the rest of this particular like round or activation. And we can kind of like call it there or something. But then there's like more complex characters like Mephisto, which can do like 5 things, during their like activation. Like, is there like a crazy through line they can do, for instance, that, late game that can be something that you want to test out? Like, what's the highest ceiling of potential you can have, right? Especially on a particular crisis scenario or, in a matchup, for instance. So I kind of want, it's hard to express if that makes sense, guys, but like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So yeah, if there's potential, right, you want to sort of explore that, right? And before you call for that re-rack and like, let's try something else.
And I think it's definitely something that you play by ear more than anything else when you're doing practice, just because like it falls down to really more the art than science parts, like the exact point at which you want to re-rack and maybe try again, where you're like, we're kind of hitting that point of no return, or like you just have to gauge it. And I think it's one of these other points where like having that discussion in game with your partner, like how do you see this situation? Like, what do you think my outs are? And like have that exchange constantly makes a big difference. And I think it's like something that you really have to be cognizant about and trying to work towards when you're doing purposeful practice.
Yeah. I would agree with that.
Yeah, I think it's good to play out a lot of games, because if you are the one that is down like middle of the game, if you in your practice games you play out the full game, you can think of ways to come and crawl yourself back, and to take the game back into your control. And if you don't practice all the time, you just like play the rounds 1 and 2 out. Well, then when you're in a tournament, you are going 4 or 5, maybe 6 rounds. Your mental state might be a little bit different and not as up to par as you want it to be.
Yeah, you want to be able to like keep yourself focused, right, and keep looking for the outs, because a lot of times, Marvel games will be more chaotic than on the rails, right?
Oh
and we all 3 of us have experienced this. So it is important for us to be able to have that focused mindset to still stay in the game and keep looking for outs, right? And it may not be the out in 1 round, but maybe you need 2, 3 rounds to do it, right? But as long as you can still play the game without them winning the game, there is a potential for you to like be able to still, win by the end. I've seen people come back from like 10-point deficits in this game, double-digit deficits. It's possible.
I've been there.
So, but at the same time, like, you can figure out like what's worth your time, right? So, think about the scope, right? Like, are we doing this for like the first couple turns just to get that solid down?
Yeah.
Or do we want to just like explore like, what character activations can be like throughout the entirety of the game? Yeah. So that's kind of like how we can approach as characters. What were you about to say, Simon?
Oh yeah, I was about to segue into like the next point. I think like trying to determine what and how long you want to go for is a good idea from the get-go, like just setting expectations. And I think like for crisis purposes, it's very interesting. So like a very good and clear example is like I've been running an X-Men blog for like a very long time, and people have brought up that like the X-Men openings are fairly numerous and complex, and just being able to have access to that resource makes a difference. But like the way I went at it is just like, I have these crises, what are the distances? And like, same for the RSMP Red Room training series Jian did, right?
Mhm.
Just trying to find out what are the distances, where can I go, what can I do, and like figuring out your opening on certain crises. Like, how do you unpack scroll, for example? Like, I still find to this day that a lot of people unpack scroll very poorly. Like, they don't know how to go at it. And I feel like the crisis has been in there for so long that it still catches me off guard that like some people have no idea how to play that crisis. And I think like it's one of the crises where knowing how to unpack it well and certain key features, like knowing that 50 millimeter base medium mover gets to your home scroll, or just any long mover, like makes a difference compared to someone who doesn't know that, right? So like being able to unpack certain scenarios and figuring out like where things go is something you can very easily practice even by yourself. Like just booting up TTS, putting down the scenarios and like, okay, so where can this model go in this setup? Or like, what can I do to pick up these extracts? Or like figuring out things is something you can easily squeeze in like 15, 20 minutes here and there, just trying to figure out like, how do I play my round one on scrolls?
Yeah, it's interesting because like really if you have like get a mat or just a virtual tabletop together and just take your roster out, right? And just sort of start putting these tokens down and you sort of experimenting like where they can go. I think will do a lot like in Lumen. You don't need to memorize everything, but just kind of understand the feeling, right, of like scrolls. It's like, okay, who is able to pick up a scroll like, pretty okay, like, and who are able to pick up a scroll not very okay. For like, you double walk a Mysterio to pick up a scroll, it's gonna be a bad time for him most of the time,
I'm just glad that you mentioned bring out a mat because I've always thought I was the only one that does that. Like
Oh, no.
I have a mat in my car, and if I have models, sometimes I'll be at my girlfriend's house and I'll think of something in my head. I'll go get my mat, roll it out on the living floor, and just measure shit out, and like just see like different movements. That made me feel valid. I thought I was crazy when I did that.
You're
not
validated.
not at all. You'd
Really?
be surprised. Like Nick Menard does it at work. Like he sometimes like puts a mat and his tools on like his meeting table at work, measure shit in the middle of the workday when we're like asking measurement questions while we're all working. So like we're all there.
Yeah, you're in good company, Mike. Don't worry. We're clearly
You're among
a bunch of
friends.
very cool people.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that does this.
Oh no.
But visibility among friends aside, I think it is just really useful. Like I cannot express like there's something about theorizing something right in your head, but then
Yeah.
actually taking something tactilely to move stuff around and see where it is.
Yeah.
It does a lot for muscle memory, visual memory. Like it does a lot to sort of like it's like, oh, this deployment that I was thinking about does not work, or this deployment actually can work. I just need to tweak some things here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good. It's like a good fundamental that I feel a lot of players don't have is just knowing measurements of what models can
get
how
where.
models can move and like ranges. That's just a general fundamental. I think a lot of people should practice more, just knowing movement and ranges because it really helps with your deployments.
Yeah. That's why we always mention the first episode of RSMP, and also we recently Steven and I we did a deployment episode and get ready to get better for this podcast as well. So we touched on a bunch of those. Like it's definitely something that at least to get you started on the shorthand, right? The fact is you think about like how much flexibility a long mover has. If they're like a small base long mover, and just below that is just the amount of coverage from a medium base medium mover, also huge as well. And then you start thinking also about it's like, okay, well, does this character also have extra movement on top of that, right? That they can do to sort of like cover some ground and whatnot. So all this comes together to help hopefully give you a better idea of deployment, and then like what you can get away with as far as like not giving away a lot of information, which is all things you should consider. But that's a separate topic that we cover. For crisis though, like you just want to get an idea of the layout and how fast the scoring is too. I think that's something that like people really just don't think about too much. Like because I was playing a game against a Kingpin player, but he had like Survivor, Search for Shelter in his list. I'm just like, oh man, this score is really slow for you. I don't know if this is something that that really works. Like here, for instance, okay, and we got to play out that match, and it was like, ooh, yeah, this is really slow. It's like, yeah, you should probably get something like faster, right? If your King plan is like your main one, for instance, so you gotta dial in what price you want to take depending on like what the roster's goal intent is, right? Again, does your roster want to play a fast game, a normal pace game? I'd say normal, like 8 points on the ground, basically, or something slower than that. So you only want to play like 6 or 7 points, like, and that should like factor into your crisis selection. And sometimes also maybe you have a roster first and you somehow are getting to the crisis like last, and maybe you have to discover which crisis actually work for your team as well. So I think it's part of that is also identifying like what is your roster asking for in the first place.
Well,
So
I would like to say with that, your crisis selection can be dictated by the characters that you bring. How you build your list around will determine what characters you want to bring. My whole Guardians roster originally was just like all attrition, but soon after I added Nova and added Juggernaut into the list, a lot of those missions actually came out and replaced with fast scoring scenarios where I know I can displace very easily. So the characters can easily just dictate the crisis selection that you want to bring.
right. So in this pathway, right, like for instance, let's take your Guardians example, right? I need to beat defenders. So to beat defenders, I need to get some displacement. And these are really good displacement pieces I have, but they're not actually doubling down on the attrition anymore. So now you've relooked at your crisis pool, like, oh, I should take some more scoring ones because I'm actually better at scoring now because I'm taking these anti-meta pieces, for instance. So that's like an interesting like little like domino effect, right? That's happening as you're doing like your practice here.
Yeah, totally.
So then that also means that's why you end up taking call for backup for Nova as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, yeah. That card, like I see it on this couch so many times, like for a long time that card is amazing and it's stupid and it's just waiting to be cracked. And all it took was the crisis shakeup and the new crisis selection to really make it crack. And that card, dude, that card is so good. It really puts your opponent in like what do I do mindset round one, because they have to play around that card, but then they end up playing around that card, so you don't end up having to use it half the time, and then you can just threaten it the rest of the game.
Yeah, like certain cards like that can be like soft power, right? Where you don't even have to use it, just
And
to
then
threaten
sometimes they just accept that you're going to use it, and they just play into it, and then you end up using it. It's just a win-win scenario every time I've experienced it. The only time I don't bring it is on beta flips.
Fair.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you still take it against defenders, I think, just to disrupt like potentially a bubble that they do. But that's a more niche case.
It's really good against the bubble.
Yep. So yeah, tactics cards is interesting because I think like when you have crisis changes, right, or character changes for that matter, right, should we take a second look at tactics cards, right? So you can approach it from a couple different ways. You can look at Nova, for instance, right? If he's very relevant in the meta, his card becomes relevant, right? There are, let's say all the Black Widows get like really good. Do we start thinking about taking vertical assistance, like, with these characters because it adds an interesting like movement vector for your team? But then there's also things like Simon, joint effort. I would imagine that the crisis, setups, right, becoming close together means that there's a better opportunities now to play that versus like, the older bad crisis that would have more like Ds and stuff, right? That were more prevalent.
Yep, exactly. And I think like at least for me, tactics card are more something that you try like to find for your last pieces, like when you're looking at like your 9th or 10th card or like trying to attack against certain matchups. That's where you'll mostly, at least in my experience, want to work towards picking or like doing purposeful practice with certain tactics card.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm trying to think of like how else do we purposely practice text? I guess when a character has multiple cards, right, available to them, how do you guys go about? Do you guys have a system at all? Like trying to narrow down, like for instance, like every time I look at Shang-Chi, okay, I know Chi Mastery is like the bee's knees, right? It's really good. But then I look at Human Weapon.
Human Weapon.
That card is kind of bananas, actually.
It is.
That is another
Because
good card.
yeah, because like I don't. Okay, listeners, I don't know if you looked at the other Shang-Chi card because we never talk about it, but it's another charge that doesn't eat into your current Hidden Leaves charge, right? And it's an AoE attack that auto stuns before damage, and maybe it gives a stagger out. Like it's kind of crazy, actually.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I guess it's just like it's like well, you can't take you only have so many slots, so you don't really want to dedicate that much to like one character, right?
Well,
I've been fucked up by that card more than I care to admit. Like it's a really freaking good card.
So what I do is I don't when it comes to character cards, I limit my roster one card per character. I don't want to put too much unless it's a limited roster like I don't know, like New Mutants or something. I don't want to put so much pressure onto that one character to perform and to bring both those cards. Because then what I end up doing a lot of times is I would only bring one character card into my 5 when I'm playing a game. So if I have, like, say I have Shang-Chi, Juggernaut, and Nova, a lot of times I would only bring one of their cards. I don't usually bring, like, all 3. Because usually you have good affiliation cards plus you're 2 restricted. And that way also you don't have to rely on characters to use their cards.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, so Mike, we recently got to play in a tournament together, and in my roster selection or squad selection at the time, I took 2 character cards, and that exact thing happened. I would have been much better off taking a good restricted card and just 1 character card versus like 2 character cards, because then like I was trying to always like look for the opportunity for that character to use it, and it just never came up. And what we talked about post game was that it's like yeah, that would have been better if it was just 1 card to take back.
Okay. Yeah, I don't like bringing multiple character cards into a game. Now, if we're playing for fun, that's different. But if we're talking competitively, I just bring 1 per game. And usually, like the occasion only requires 1. You don't need to bring all like these character cards. And it just depends on what your game plan is. Like, if you have a character that has an attrition-based card like Shang-Chi, or if you have like a displacement card like Do You Know Where I Am from Juggernaut, what is this mission and the team I'm going against? What is it going to require more of?
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So I guess like, how do you guys go about like testing tactics cards? Right, I know this is something that probably people don't think about as much. Like we always typically focus on the characters and crisis cards, but the tactics cards actually do have like a lot of little nuance there. For instance, like I've been trying to play a little more Emma Frost lately, Simon, under X-Men, and like deciding whether or not I need to take Cerebro versus I need to take a Headmistress, right?
Yeah.
Like what is my tree here? Like how do I go about figuring that out? For instance, like I don't know if you would have any insight on that as an example.
I think personally, what I usually try to do is like force myself to play 1 like every game again to kind of stress test it, and do the same with the other, and then try to do both. Like, see, what are the scenarios where I'd want both, and where are the scenarios where I'd want none? And I think like it's something you just kind of have to like go against it, like just play it, then try to figure out how it works, right? I feel I'm usually trying to play Cerebro. Cerebro usually comes up for me in very different matchups than the ones for a Headmistress. So like, yes, I have 2 Emma Frost cards in my list, but both usually don't come in at the same time and in the same matchups. So it's like easier on that point. Like there is some narrow scenarios where I will want both, but they're more fringe than just one or the other. And sometimes you just don't bring any of Emma Frost's tactics card, and that's fine.
Right.
Also, you just have to like, in order to be able to identify those when and wheres, it's just good old fashioned practice. And like, you got to play those games. Like my objective this game is to learn how and when to play Headmistress, for instance.
Gotcha. Yep. Simon, you were a little choppy there for a second, but I think we got the messages. So
yeah.
No, it's okay. But yeah, for the most part, yeah, listeners, you do have to just sort of try both, right, in different scenarios and just sort of figure out what makes sense here. And then sometimes it's both, sometimes it's one, sometimes it's none, right, Simon? So
yep,
in
exactly.
short. So, and yeah, the way I point about it is that I was trying out Cerebro and I was like, okay, sometimes you'll have like a B map or something. I'm just like, okay, this requires like a heavy rotation thing, so I don't get as much value potentially out of this unless it's like specifically I'm just trying to ignore stealth here. But then there's things like assault ship or like the surprise attack, right? That's sort of off center ones, and getting her like to range 5 is actually really relevant, like in those particular maps where the scenario points are like really, really tight together, right? So, but that's something that I wouldn't inherently have realized if I didn't just try this, right, on a bunch of matches until like it's like, okay, all right, I'm starting to get it, and you still can be wrong, but at least you have a better idea. Like being 70% sure versus 40% sure is a lot better. I think at the end of the day. So yeah, so that's kind of how you would think about tech discards. Restricted cards. I do want to ask you guys like your thought process about picking your restricted cards. So, Mike, if you have to pick 2 restricted cards per list, do you have some sort of like standardized like way to sort of figure that out, or do you have to just do it by feel, or what's your process like?
Yeah. It depends what the list is. The one restricted card that's in all my lists is fallback.
Same.
Yep,
that card,
100%. That's become like the new brace, I think, at this point.
Yeah, that card is just ridiculous. You can use it in so many different ways. You don't really need to talk about that, but that's like I bring that in every list. And then the second restricted card, it depends. When it comes to building for team events, what is my team that I have trying to counter, and what is it trying to do? If my team needs more survivability, maybe you bring brace. That way to help with throw damage if they don't have good ways to negate throws. Am I going into a certain matchup? Am I going into like defenders mostly, right? I'll probably bring Indom. Okay. Stop the push, stop the throw. That's going to help. It's going to come into key moments. Maybe I'll bring sacrifice to neglect some of the attacks and, put it onto a different team. Or maybe I'll bring patch up. I know like I have patch up in my main list is because I have a lot of health models and models that can use it well and spend power well, like King T or Juggernaut. They are always flush on power and they can always use patch up on somebody. Or if somebody patches them up, it's clutch. It just negates a whole activation that your opponent just did of damage. So it just depends on what you're building your team for and what is it trying to do. Generally.
Nice. Yeah, I think I'm starting to realize that too for patch up. It's like one, who's the quote unquote medic, right? Who has the extra spare power for you to play it? And if you don't have someone on the team that generates a lot of power that you bring often into your match, then that means that patch up is probably not as enticing, right, to play. And in case of Juggernaut and King T specifically, not only do these characters generate a lot of power, but they're so mobile that during their activation, they can usually find themselves next to a ally that is taking some damage, right? And they can like patch them up at that point too. So that's also a consideration for patch up specifically. I know it's a really popular card, but sometimes I see people taking it, like let's say Webs will take it, and I'm just like, I don't think that's a great fit because Webs characters usually don't have enough power to play it, right? And they don't usually have the pool to helpful to survive like a double or triple tap from an activation sometimes to be able to play it.
I wouldn't even say patch up is the least taken restricted card. No.
It probably is right now, yeah. Because defenders are kind of in vogue, I'd say Indomitable is definitely like spiked quite a bit up.
Yeah, I think the generic, like the go-to is Indom and Fallback, which are good. Like they're definitely good. But then you also have Sacrifice and Patch Up that I like too for different reasons.
Yep. Yeah, Sacrifice is also interesting too. So yeah, this kind of drills down to like when you look at your roster, what things sort of benefit from that. So for instance, like in an A Force list, I could potentially, see taking like, Indom to sort of like protect She-Hulk from like being like moved, for instance. But I could also see like, a good sacrifice, right? Because like, you can probably avoid a model from getting like double tapped by a character. And then, usually that means you're also giving a lot of power out as well. So then, they can have like a more interesting activation because of the leadership is just like, rewarding you for getting hit, but not necessarily losing your activation, And I'm sure there's other cases where like sacrifice is actually quite good. Like Like I know webs are not in vogue right now, but sacrifice was one of the most annoying things to play around when you had Miles, right? Miles 1, and you're just trying to like do a venom blast on somebody, but they have the sacrifice in the tank, and you're just like, this is annoying. I can't do it.
Yeah, I think webs. That's the shake the card they hate the most is sacrifice.
Yep.
I don't think the other ones really matter. Like someone might have Indom, cool, but all my models displaced anyway. So like I'm gonna get out of you eventually, and then still be able to displace you.
Yep. But Simon, you're also a proponent that I think you mentioned that through your testing, you found that Brace was pretty useful for your wider like X-Men team, right?
Yeah. So basically, like a good example for this is like with X-Men, I tend to prefer playing a lot of wider maps. So if you're playing a lot of Ds and Bs, sacrifice, you'll have less good opportunities for sacrifice as your characters tend to be more spread out. So having two characters next to each other, from which you would want to protect an activation exactly in that setup, comes up less often than just being thrown into something or having something thrown at you. So for me, I think it puts a higher value on Brace, but I'm also in a meta where a lot of people still throw a lot of shit around. So that collision damage comes up pretty often. And like if you're playing a bunch of like affiliations where throws are really scarce because people are not playing any models that either throw models or terrain, then Brace might be not so good. So it's, I think, something that's also worth tailoring to like the environment you're playing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's going to be a consistent theme, right? As we talked about Purposeful Practice, is that you kind of always want to you never stop practicing because every time a new element comes in, either characters or crisis, right? Or even tactics cards. Sometimes there's just a new generic tactics cards that gets released, and like, does this change everything? When Warpath was like, brought back in, there could be various characters that like, now have to be really valued with the fact that they have an aggressive move with this, So, I mean, it's not game breaking, but it is something now that when you see, like, let's say a Dracula for Warpath, they're like, oh, I have to be very careful. Like, how do I attack this guy? Because otherwise something could potentially happen here that I didn't expect, for instance. So that's something to all think about, like within the realm of like, any of these we talked about, like characters, crisis, or tactics cards, always reevaluating the environment and the element. You can also listen to Bork do an impression of me saying this again in a previous episode. But that's to be delved in the archives for that.
I also want to say for tactics cards, it's good when you're picking your 10 to have at least, besides the restricted cards, to have at least one generic card that everyone can use. It's not team affiliated, it's not character affiliated, whether that be like Warpath, Recal, Joint Effort, or whatever. Just having one card that anyone can use, it goes a long way.
Yeah.
Yep. It's probably not heavy firepower. I'll say this right now.
I don't remember what that card is.
It's Bork's favorite card, guys. How do you guys not remember this?
I know what it does. I'm not going to play it.
Okay, I read the card. Don't use that card. But one has War Machine on the art, so it's already bad.
It's Carol Danvers and War Machine, and man, that is a please help card for sure.
Dude, there's 5 different arts for this card. Holy shit!
Okay, they keep reprinting it.
I'll put it this way: for me, those types of cards are good litmus tests to know like you're getting better at the game. So when you read it, it reads as not bad. Once you play it, you're like, this is not good. And you end up cutting it from your list and play something that's better instead. And I think like those quote unquote bad cards are important in the learning process, and it's not to be discounted.
Yeah. No, that's true. And like I said, sometimes like you will play enough games that you can start theorizing things like, okay. But in the meantime, like you can also try things out to realize like, oh, okay, is there like a range counter? Is there like, some sort of like placement counter, right? So, this card, for instance, the reason why we say that it's probably like pretty rough to play is because there's a huge range restriction on it, and you also need these particular characters that can also operate at that range band, right? So, and from that too, like dice are also not guaranteed, right? So you think about Chi Mastery that lets you set what type of dice you want, right? And that's an extremely impressive effect right on a card, versus just rolling some extra attack dice, which as we've seen in this game, sometimes you spike, sometimes you roll nothing from that too. And sometimes you can evaluate cards. Maybe you play this and it does nothing. Hence our recalibration discussion at the beginning of the episode that we always have when Simon's on.
Oh my God.
And that's a reasonable
Hey.
conclusion to come to. What'd you say, Mike?
I'm just ragging on Simon again.
Oh, but yeah, I think then the way you can sort of look at tactics cards also, and we'll probably expand on this in another episode as well. But as a general rule, see if the tactics card, as you practice with it and use it, did it save you from losing a victory point, or did it help you gain a victory point? I think, or did it preserve a character activation? If it does any of those things, I think it's usually, as a general rule of thumb, a pretty good tactics card. I would say most of the time. So.
Yeah, that's a good role.
Yeah. Okay. So more nebulous. I'm thinking about purposeful practice against affiliations, and then also matchups. So I think those are kind of just one topic potentially together.
I agree.
So I guess we're already pretty deep into this. So we're assuming that you already have a roster, but maybe there's little tweaks. Do you need to play against a particular matchup for your current roster, and does that necessitate whether or not you need to also, in my opinion, whether or not you need to check it back of the list. Do you need a character? Do you need a different crisis? Do you need a tactics card, or do you even need to do a dual or triple affiliation, right, to compensate for a matchup?
Yeah, affiliation.
It's hard to do, but some players have been able to do it. And maybe that's the right call. Sometimes it's not the right call. It depends on your particular style and what the environment is kind of calling for right now.
I will say this about triple affiliation. If you want to stress your head for 2 weeks like I did and come up with a list, do it. Because the result is actually awesome. I'm not saying it's gonna work all the time, but it makes you feel fucking smart when you do come up with it and it works. Also, if you want to mess with your opponent's head, they don't know what the hell you're gonna play, and you can catch them off guard half the time because they're listening what is going on.
There's definitely a degree of list chicken that you can do with that. So so practicing against a matchup. We've the defenders example we've done quite a bit at this point. So if you guys, let's say, need to play against another affiliation, so let's say
I have an example at hand, actually.
Oh, so yeah, please go ahead, Simon.
When I was designing my current list, for Storm pay to flips, right? You have 4 pretty wide pay to flips, but you're always looking for that 5th secure, right? So I tried Scoundrels, I tried Infinity Formula, and I ended up settling on Power Overload, but I was still kind of scared against Webs and CS, where a semi-wide secure with bonus VP is spooky into Kingpin. So I was I'd have to see how do I fare into this exact matchup or this exact situation where this scenario will come up in my crises and they will select it over Mutant Madmen or X Flips. So I have to be ready for that, specifically against Kingpin. So it's easy to set yourself up and say, okay, I'm gonna do a purposeful practice. Let's say I'm playing Kingpin into this exact secure and another extract. How do I fare? And then help me pick up the last scenario I needed for my list. So figuring these things out and just trying to find these edge cases where this scenario is popular in XYZ list. How do I fare up against them? How do you play safe shelters versus defenders, right? It can be a scary matchup if you're not prepared for it. Then I think on your scenarios versus on their scenarios can change the game drastically. So being able to be prepared for these will definitely make a big difference when you play those matchups.
Yeah, and specifically, I'll call out the safe shelters defenders specifically. I am kind of at this point feeling that they're so strong on that, Simon, is that whatever other secure pops up, I almost kind of feel like you take the other one most of the time if it's into a defender's list. This is purely just from anecdotal experience, but the combination of it being so low scoring, very portals friendly, and then that extra defense dice, right, that you give to your friends, just triple layers on top of their defense tech, and then on top of any hexes, right, that you experience. I'm just like, and that's something you don't really see until you practice like into that matchup. I'm just like, oh, this is probably the worst scenario I could take into a list. And so with that ability to veto one of the crises you draw, maybe then you think about, okay, if it's wedding party, lockdown, doesn't matter. It's not as bad as survivor search for safe shelter, and that's something that just kind of comes with you like practicing that, right? So
yeah. And I think like, especially since we're dealing with a new semi-new scenario packet, like being able to be well practiced enough to remember and never forget all the scenarios effects will make a big difference. And like, I played my league game last week against Dutch on safe shelters, and I think I missed at least seven safe shelters rerolled that would have made a difference. And attacks I took. So like, that's definitely a mistake I made from not having played that scenario enough. And I think like it's very easy to underestimate how much games or like how practiced you need to be with a certain scenario. Like if you're always banning it, you might as well like lose some of the basics that would make a difference in another matchup, for instance.
Yeah, so like that matchup specifically, I was reminiscing about my game with Mike Dambois at ACO in that finals, and yeah, me, not being prepared, right, and practicing because I had the choice of lockdown or survivors, like, and that's from a secure pool. I chose survivors, and that was ultimately a mistake, like I think at the end, but that's because I wasn't practiced into it. And he was much more practiced, and he remembered his extra dice because I don't think it's a reroll, Simon. I think it's
it's an additional dice, right? See, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Exactly. So I set myself up for failure in that matchup. And again, nothing to take away from Dan Bob because he like absolutely outplayed me like for that one as well. But I didn't set myself for any favors because I wasn't practicing enough in the scenarios. I should have taken more time to do my homework. And then also remember that even there, I didn't take any of the extra dice rerolls or extra dice add-ons for my defenses that I should have, that could have saved a bunch of characters at the end of the day. And it just felt icky afterwards because like, I showed up to class and I didn't do the homework and man, I got schooled, right? Because of that,
Yeah. Well, there's also like, because the example of tournaments, and if you're not practiced on something and you draw that and something else, just pick the one that you're more practiced on. Repetition is always going to be better than theory, I guess. Like, like if people have like theory, something is good on a certain secure, but they haven't tried it and they're in a tournament, they're like, well, now's the time to try it. I think you should go with what you know than what what the theory of it is.
I agree.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And in that case too, like lockdown would have been actually the better matchup because like lockdown, I know, for instance, like asks for a lot of more movement questions, right? For both teams. And it's less predictable where you're going to get the scoring from versus like survivors where you're going to get the scoring from these 3 points every time, every round. And, I think that extra bit of chaos would have like helped me than hampered me at the end of the day. And again, could have practiced that in a matchup. And there's going to be more things too. So like, with the help updates and stuff, it's not going to be just defenders on survivors. I feel that every scenario is probably going to have like, 1 or 2 champions, right? Per, so you want to it's like, okay, do you have a plan against like Kingpin on Scoundrels, right? Which is the other infamous one, right? You play Kingpin on Scoundrels, you better have a plan like for that because that's their plan A. And, do you have enough displacement or, just a raw amount of like dazing power to like, sort of take care of that, then to slow the game down. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, that that's something that you don't want to pick up, right? Or you don't want to select, right? Should that option come up.
Well, I'll tell you this past weekend when I played against you and Omar, both my pulls are the D map data flip. What is that one called? Strike team?
Yeah, you had the opportunity to play Strike Team, but I don't think you took it.
Strike Team or Madman against you and Omar. You're both playing X-Men. I'm over here like, well, I have never played against X-Men on Strike Team. I played against them plenty of times on Madman. I'm picking Madman. I'm like, I'm not about to test my luck today.
What? No, you're a web player. You know how DMAPs work. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah,
No,
but like, I'm playing. We play Guardians. You guys are playing like X-Men. I'm like, I'm not testing this out.
no,
Like,
I'm joking. You absolutely 100% picked the right thing, which is like Guardians will do much better against X-Men on Mutant Admin than they would on Strike Team, in my opinion. At least, I don't know. What do you think, Simon?
Yep, I agree. I think
Okay.
like yeah, I think it makes a big difference, and just being able to be repped really helps break those make those choices, right?
Yeah. And I think the more practice you get, like, on different crises, so even if you don't practice this matchup specifically, if you know how to play Strike Team and you know your roster, and then you also know how to play Madman, right? So let's say you're Mike Waller here and you have actually played both on Strike Team and Madman, then you can have a much better chance of like evaluating what's the better situation for you, right? For your
Yeah,
roster.
you're able to make a well-informed choice.
Yeah, no, 100%. But that's also, goes to like, if you're not practiced on something because you didn't put the reps into a certain crisis, and if you're in a tournament, just don't pick that scenario. Like, it's better to go with what you know how to play on than testing the theory that you think you do well on this.
Right.
I'm saying it's not going to work, but I would rather take the known than the unknown.
Yeah, no, agreed.
Yeah.
And so but like I said, the reason you do the purposeful practice is so that you do have more options, right? Versus you like trying to do it live. I mean, some people can do it, but ultimately it is better, like you guys said, to do what you know than what is just theory, right? At the end of the day.
It's not like MCP isn't like an open game. Like everything's open information.
Yeah.
It's just
There's no
remembering that.
gotchas, there's no surprises. You just have to be able to like bear the cognitive load of remembering everything.
Yeah, exactly. The variance of this game come from the dice. That's the unknown part.
Yeah.
Is when the spikes are going to happen. So doing this practice takes away a lot of the unknown, and you're able to know it and remember it for tournaments.
Yep. And so I think that probably covers like mostly what we want to talk about as far as like purposeful practice and sort of like what is its value, right? And how does it sort of relate to our current like situation? We do want to touch just very briefly that like as an overall concept, like purposeful practice does help if you know what your next goal is, right? So if you're planning for an event, I think that's like the easiest thing to do. Like it's like, hey, are you playing in a singles event? Are you playing in a 3-man team event? Are you playing building up the WTC, right? That will sort of dictate what restrictions you're kind of working under. And also like whether or not you want to take like, if you're going to a local, and you're an experienced player, like, do you want to use your top tier team or do you just want to work on a different team, right? And that can sort of help guide like potentially like what kind of models and stuff you want to take or what roster you want to take. But if you're doing a 3-man team or WTC, like we mentioned before with Mike, that helped guides, what kind of limitations you have as far as like character selections goes. And maybe from there, that also helps you like figure, try more stuff out, right? Within that context. I don't know if you guys have anything else to add as far as like, how do you think events sort of like shape your practice?
Well,
any
I
other way?
want to ask you two, since you've both been to WTC, is a 3 affiliation list possible with 5-man teams, or is it very hard?
I think it depends on your teammates, right? Like that's something you have to try to figure out with who you're playing. So like for instance, if like someone is running webs, shields, A4s, like a lot of these models share the same affiliations or like there's a lot of overlap. So it's like fairly doable if like your teammates are like Guardians, X-Men, Inhumans, for instance. Like it really depends on how you want to structure your team, as opposed to teams like currently Defenders, which have a lot of premium models. So like there's an argument if you want to run Defenders, do you strip them for parts? Or do you want to play like the triple affiliation list? So I think it's something that has to be weighed with your teammates and how you want to coordinate that.
Yeah.
But I feel like if from the get-go they know that's what you want to get into, it's probably going to be easier for them to find the time to purposefully practice without those models if they're currently running it.
It's also one of those things where like you certainly can't have all 5 team members, right, do a triple affiliated, because that's probably a lot of stress, right, to ask. Even though there's 230-ish characters, I think, by the time WTC hits, if not more. Within that pool though, there's only so many affiliated characters from each thing to kind of go around. So what it will be is like having that conversation, and I think most of the time when you're making a triple affiliate list, like there's probably like, here's a primary list, here's the plan A, but here's plan B, or B, C, right? As well.
Yeah.
And then from there you can sort of like figure out what the priority is. I was talking with Connor at some point, and the way the English team did their stuff was that they just want to get their list to about 80% of like, okay, what is the bare bones, right? You need to like get your list to work. And then from 20%, what is the garnish you put on top for like specific matchups or situations on top of that?
I like that mindset.
And like something that's very relevant for especially WTC as opposed to like 3-player teams is that because of the 5 players size, you can successfully shield certain players from matchups. So like if you have like this one matchup that like you have no tools against, you're like super scared, it's the end of the world, it's an 80-20 against you, you can just dodge it and you can design your list knowing you will never play against this. So you can use your tools and like place your teams and do your pairings surgically by having like some of your lists being catch-alls, like really catcher's mitt, where you can field them kind of into everything, and then have your like scalpels where you'll use them surgically against certain other affiliations, or even targeting certain players directly. So like a good example, when I was talking with Collar, the captain for the Swedes team last year, like he knew he wanted to force as many Inhuman mirrors as he could because Torbjorn had an incredible win record in the mirror. So like for them, he was definitely a scalpel to which like just throw every single Inhumans into him so he would like crush them. And I think being cognizant of that when you're building your lists on a team format is relevant. Like that's definitely a lesson I learned in my first WTC, for instance, where like we had one player who was like super afraid of webs. So we basically gave him every tool, but then when we had to play against a webs player, they would always just dodge him. So like we had wasted all of those models effectively instead of like trying to leverage them more intelligently or like fit those try to accommodate for that and just like shield him from the webs matchup instead of like giving it over teching for it.
Yeah, so in the singles list where you may be more encouraged to like make a more rounded list and take on a lot of like anticipated like expected matchups, in like a team event, especially in WTC where it's 5-man, you can be more specialist, right? You don't have to plan for everything. And also make sure the thing you're planning it has at least the same amount of tools as the other ones. So our first year at WTC, for instance, I wanted to play webs, but I think Jeff had taken Wong like on his team because he wanted the 2-thread for better flexibility. But I didn't realize like how badly I felt behind other webs teams, right, at WTC because they had Wong and I did not.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh crap, this is not good. I'm way behind. Their Gwens are doing a lot more than my Gwen can do because they have that privilege of getting that extra power like the round one, So and that's why it's important to figure out like what is the 80% of like what is the main function that I need for my thing to work, and like does it help the team as well, right? So like okay, if you have 3 teams that are good in defenders, that's great, but if you don't have an answer for the APOC matchup and in your 5 members, that's a problem, for instance.
You're going to be stuck and it's going to feel pretty bad.
Yeah. So that's sort of like how we would, I guess, like think about like the WTC like related stuff, which can be an entire topic, Simon. I think we probably should do a more WTC thing, which I guess will probably expand a lot of these like topics that we talked about. But did that answer your question, Mike?
Yes, and it just gets me excited to practice more for WTC.
Hell yeah, dude!
All of it. It's gonna be a great time.
It's by far my favorite MCP event of the year.
You know what I am worried about? I'm worried that I'm gonna love it so much that's gonna want me to go every single year.
No, that's what happened to us. Like this is gonna be our third year.
That literally just happened to us. You're taking the 2 people. That's exactly what happened to you, dude.
I know. But straight up, it's like I'm gonna end up loving it so much that it's like, all right, I gotta go every year now, and then I gotta.
Well,
work,
yes.
like, yeah.
I'm not gonna blame you. So, like, I'm right there.
Because that's how I feel about squad goals now. After the second time, especially after how we did the second time, it's like, well, now we definitely have to run it back every single time.
Well, team events are just like my favorite formats in general. Like, they make for much more interesting decisions and like list building in general, especially 5 players. I think it's like where you actually have to stretch your resources and have discussion and like have a big back and forth.
Yeah, I always tell people that after going to a bunch of team events, it's my favorite format for MCP.
Oh yeah.
I don't get excited going to singles as much anymore.
As much as like
it's like, yeah, I'm going, honestly, when I go to single events, it's just to hang out with everybody that's there. It's not even, for the event itself. It's just to see all my friends. But with team events, it's the brainstorming and the practice leading up to it and testing different things. Just a lot of fun.
And for like the mood for WTC is definitely different when there's like 100, like 200 MCP players playing in the same room at the same time. Like, it gets really crazy.
Yeah, I always just enjoy it because it's the most like genuine celebration of this game that we all like to invest our time and talk about, And it's just so good to see like every part of the world that's there to show up. Like, we just love this game, want to play it, and genuinely, for the most part, everyone's just there to have good games, right? And have a good time with everybody. And that's just an infectious like atmosphere to be a part of,
Absolutely.
All right. Any other final thoughts as far as purposeful practice, folks, or shall we round out the episode?
I think we can wrap it up.
All right. So thanks everybody for joining us today. Thank you, listeners, for listening to our short interim episode as we still await our updates, but hopefully they'll come sooner than later. You can find Alive on One on our Discord. We also have an email at aliveon1@gmail.com. RSMP stuff will hopefully be starting up soon again. But in the meantime, there should be 4 episodes released now that you can still look at for deployment stuff, even if the rules are a little bit behind. Please leave a review on Apple or Spotify, wherever you might prefer to listen. We're also now on YouTube, so please go on the Live on One YouTube to check us out if you would prefer to play it on your YouTube premiums. Affiliate link is below. Thank again, Mike and Simon, for joining me for this discussion. And
thanks for
Godspeed. Yeah, for sure. Anytime. All right, Godspeed team events, and good night, everybody.
Release the updates.